until now, the wood has been the way you're used to seeing wood in a lumber yard. In other words, sort of dusty, sort of dry, rather pale, not especially remarkable. The last stage in the process is to put several coats of finish on it, typically polyurethane. And what I hadn't realized is how much that changes the wood, the overall work of art, and what it suggests about the nature of writing itself. So here, for example, is a piece that with the urethane on it, it's become darker, it's become richer. All of a sudden, all of the ripples and eddies in the grain become that much clearer. And it was when I was working on a piece like this one that I suddenly started thinking about illuminated manuscripts and gold leaf. The reason why gold leaf was used was a kind of a metaphor. It wasn't just to make manuscripts look pretty. It was to say, this is a spiritual text that is capable of illuminating you. It contains the illuminating word of God, whichever God was using it, because, you know, multiple religious texts have used gold leaf. When you see something like this, you realize that the act of writing in itself is a spiritual act. If you think about the monks who are copying manuscripts in the medieval monasteries, first of all, a number of them did so kneeling. And so the attitude of writing and copying was an attitude of prayer. What they were copying was a spiritual document. And the reason they were copying it was as a means of passing spiritual enlightenment on to others. And then you realize that when you think about writing, not even sort of fancy writing like this, but day-to-day writing, what you do when you write is you think. You call your best faculties to bear and to focus on what you're doing. It really is an attitude akin to prayer in itself. You're trying to summon all those mental energies and put them to purpose. And the other thing you're doing is you're taking something insubstantial, an idea, and you're making it substantial. You're making it visible by everybody else. You're mimicking the divine act of creation itself. So I found this really, really an interesting notion, and it has sort of informed the way that I now think of going about this project. So this is the metaphysics we're dealing with here. And so, for example, here we have a piece that is chosen specifically because of the grain of the wood. This is an extraordinary and possibly unique piece of wood. Nobody knows what it actually is. The grain is incredibly turbulent. It really, to me, suggests sort of the chaos of the universe. And what I have carved into it is a prayer. It's a prayer in the Balinese script, which I think is the most beautiful in the world. And it's the prayer, Om Shanti Shanti Om. In other words, may peace be everywhere, may everywhere be peace. It's a serenity prayer. It's an attempt by human consciousness to stabilize the chaos of the universe. And that's one of the things that the prayer does. It's one of the things that writing does. Writing is our attempt to bring stability and order to a chaotic universe. Even here, we see this in a different fashion. This, as it happens, is another piece of Balinese text, but this is a board that actually has 5 different alphabets written on it. And here, as I was doing this, one of the things that happens when you apply the finish is that all of a sudden the grain becomes 3-dimensional. It seems to have depth. It's like when you're snorkeling and you look down, you have no idea how deep the bottom is. And when that 3rd dimension appears, it's as if the writing is floating above it. And that's when you realize that humans are pattern-seeking creatures, and we're pattern-making creatures. And one of the wonderful things about this as a piece of art, I suppose, is that what you see in the wood is patterns in the grain, both the grain rippling this way and what are called the rays going across this way. Those were formed by forces as old as the universe. And they are complex and they're beyond our ability to chart the mathematics of them. And so instead what we have is writing. We have our attempt to create our own sense of pattern, and we superimpose it upon there. And so I love looking at these, especially when the finish first goes on, because what it really shows is that we don't really get it. The world is a more complex place than we can write in terms of equations, but we do our best. And writing, in that sense, is a form of equation. It's a set of patterns that attempt to establish order and meaning and to communicate that order and meaning to each other, even if it's just our best guess.